Now, we have the wonderful Roi Boyd Jr. If ever there was a adjective to describe him, it would definitely be artist. Artist, humanist, spiritualist. He was born in Washington, D.C. and raised in Manassas, Virginia. Boyd was affected by arts at an early age. In his teens, he studied music and theater and pursued those disciplines throughout his lifetime to the present day. Currently, he is a professor of Virginia State University, where he teaches speech and drama. He divides his wonderful life, his beautiful partner, Jumanja Jubilee, between Richmond and Charlotte County, Virginia. So, we are ready. Thanks.
Thank you, Vera.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You are about to witness the 16th President of the United States of America. Some of you have flags. If you all would stand on your feet and welcome it in and wave your flags in honor of the 16th President of the United States of America, none other than Abraham Lincoln.
Yay.
Well, thank you very much. I first want to give special gratitude to the kind, beautiful lady who's the partner of the man whose body I inhabited, Dr. Jubilee. If you could give her some knowledge. And this gathering does take on a slightly different tone today, and we intentionally wanted it to take on a slightly different tone, considering that in your time, in this century, this is the day, obviously, they decided to celebrate my birthday on this day. But we wanted this to happen today because although historically, this occurred, I was involved in this in the course of my final days with the passing of the 13th Amendment. And I want you to know that today, being here with you is no mistake, that I am present before you in the form of an African-American man. There is no mistake in this. There is a reason for that, and I will get into that a little bit later. What I want to do is I want to talk about freedom and healing. These are themes in many of my speeches during my time in office, and yet in this moment where you are experiencing my presence and how you are experiencing my presence before you in the form of a black man, I'd like to take it that your minds are opened and accepting enough to where I call you to take a trip with me. Not far from the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue. Pennsylvania Avenue intersects more or less with Potomac Avenue. So you know about intersections. Intersections are everywhere. I understand in your time you have a framework of, sociology, a framework of that discipline that is called intersectionality. Perhaps you are familiar with that. So you know about intersections. And so I invite you to the intersection of freedom and healing, which is the area that we want to be. It's interesting that I will be talking about freedom, considering in what history painted of me as my greatest accomplishment, bestowing an act of freedom, and in addition to being the 16th president of the United States and in the state that I am in, I see that it is my great accomplishment bestowing that act of freedom, especially as I enter into your time. However, I must tell you that we have to coast through an avenue in order to get to that intersection. And that stretch of road is the avenue of injustice and slavery. Many of us do not want to face slavery, and I understand it as I observe it in your present time, that many people want to treat it as that was back in the past, or telling African Americans to get over it. Now, with what I ended, political or not, what I ended being the act of slavery, 13th Amendment, and the Emancipation Proclamation. What I ended, politically or not, and what I now witness in the consciousness that I am currently in, is how could a race of people for the rest of their time here get over such an atrocity? Kind of fitting to talk about this for African American History Month. Well, as I return here in this form and walk the earth, I notice that the wounds of this abomination continue. And they rise to the surface to this day and scar deeply. So I am grateful of your invitation today. And in order to heal, we must face it. We must face what is in front of us in order to heal. In my current state of consciousness, I have come to understand that it would suit us handsomely to look at our minds as a garden. Pull up the weeds as you go through the garden. And as you pull up the weeds, you will pull up the erroneous negative thoughts. When you pull up the erroneous negative thoughts, this will lead you to the awakened heart. The awakened heart feels all things, embraces all things, trusts all things, allows all things, and transcends all things. And to climb higher to the state of ascension, it is our due diligence to face the things that make us uncomfortable. And I am not here to make anyone feel victimized and guilty, but understand that from disturbance, we will be amazed. And then we will transcend. In order for us to get to the intersection of freedom and healing, I humbly ask if you accompany me on that thorny avenue of injustice and slavery. Instead of reveling in the victimhood of what is called white guilt, and instead of reveling in the victimhood of racism and the horror of slavery, I invite you with me to explore the truth about all that has happened. The truth. You know, Yeshua has often told us that the real truth of our being is the Christ mind. Let us attain our Christ mind and explore the truth of the matter. The truth of what has happened and what is still happening. Victimhood and guilt is the darkness that we have created for ourselves. For I am the creator of all that I think, see, and experience, as you are the creator of all that you think, see, and experience. First, let us not condemn ourselves to victimhood throughout the rest of our days. And when we do this, we deny our own personal transcendence. To be at the intersection of freedom and healing is not telling one on either side, from either side, how terrible you are. I'm going to tell you how terrible you are about what you've done to the race, or I'm going to tell you how terrible you are for how you feel about something and why you shouldn't be offended. No. With this, if we continue that practice, we, on both sides, we will continue to hold ourselves in bondage and pain. For we are the ones responsible for our experience because we are the creators. This is not how we live life. This is not how we live at the intersection of freedom and healing. What is the truth? We have to acknowledge the creations and the choices we've made. We have to acknowledge that there is injury that is real and continues to be real. And let it be understood, God has no interest in our self-flagellation and melancholy. Bless your creations, especially those that you are not proud of. Bless them, dismiss them, and let them go into the light. Do not self-flagellate yourself in the oppressive guilt, and do not wallow in the victimhood, because there's so much work to do. I did my work, and it bore wearily upon me. General Grant said I aged 10 years and 1. My time was cut short. Yet I was willing to do whatever it took and continue to do so after the conflict. In my second inaugural address, I wrote, "Let us strive on to finish the work we are in." That is what I wrote. And today I tell you, there is grace to be experienced, and there is justice to pursue. Now I'm going to take this a little bit further. There is a visual to keep for the awakening of clarity, to step out of the shadow that we created by the darkness inside of us. It was Omar Khayyam who wrote, "I sent my soul through the invisible, some letter of that afterlife to spell. And by my soul returned to me and answered, I myself am heaven and hell." So I will walk with you down this avenue of slavery, not to denigrate you, but to set you free by its truth. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. Horse was at the crossroads near where I once lived. And the horse was supposed to be fast, and quite a number of people were present at the time appointed for the sale. A small boy was employed to ride the horse backward and forward to exhibit the horse's fine points. And one of the would-be buyers, he followed the boy down to the road and asked him confidentially if the horse had a splint. "Well, mister," the boy said, "if it's good for him, he's got it. If it's not good for him, he don't." So I'm going to tell you what you say in your time. I'm going to be straight with you all. 158 years ago, I freed the enslaved Africans through a proclamation and with the passage of the 13th Amendment. Today, I encourage upon you a new freedom through a sacred effort. In 1863, I wrote, 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated with the proposition that all men are created equal. I wrote and spoke on the end result of a group of people whose desire of crossing the Atlantic to arrive at a new place because they wish to experience freedom. A new start and willing to face come what may on their journey. This was the first portion of the introductory sentence of the address. The second, a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. This group of people, they did not think of another group of people with the proposition all men are created equal. Unfortunately, they stole another group of people from their land. They were taken. They did not have the choice that the first group had, and they were taken and pulled across the ocean and brought to the same place and told that freedom is prohibited to them. Now that is a grave contradiction, and I want to build on that contradiction. As I say, we have work to do, and part of that work is to face the ugly. So I'm going to build on the contradiction. Now, the first group of people I talked about, the first group of people, they created a practice that became so prevalent and happened so often that people began to think that the practice is normal. And it becomes embedded in their psyche, in their bone marrow. And I myself am a casualty of such a system. I want to let all of you know this morning that I will not recuse myself of anything that I am responsible. Part of the system of history is covering up of what is not suitable. Well, if the winners write the history, allow me to be responsible with it today. During my election for the Senate against Stephen Douglas, I did publicly comment the following. I am not, nor have ever been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. I am not, nor have I ever been in favor of making voters of jurors of Negroes, nor qualifying them to hold office. There is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together in terms of social and political equality. Whether I said it or not to win is not the issue. I'm telling you today that this is a great example of the system of contradiction that I myself am guilty of buying into. These were thoughts from childhood, personal experiences, and the contradictory American thought. I was wrong regarding the equal pay of black soldiers during the war. Black soldiers were initially paid $10 per month, from which $3 were automatically deducted from clothing, resulting in a net pay of $7. In contrast, white soldiers received $13 per month, from which no clothing allowance was drawn. I was wrong. So wrong that Harriet Tubman said that when she heard the pay difference, it turned her against me, and she refused to meet me out of protest. I was wrong. I own my shortcoming. I blessed it, and I let it go. Because by simply doing this, it led me on the road to the awakened heart. Now, I will get back to that, but those were the thoughts that were the product of a mechanized system that is dismissed in the comfort and bliss of ignorance as normal. Systems leading many to believe that what is wrong is right. Reminds me of a story of a man who encountered a squirrel on a tree on his property. It was a majestic looking tree and apparently perfect in every part. I mean, tall and of immense size, and this grand old sentinel of his forest home, this tree was. Well, one morning while at work in his garden, he saw a squirrel run up the tree and into the hole. And he thought that the tree might be hollow. Well, he proceeded to examine it carefully, and much to his surprise, he found that the stately tree that he valued for its beauty and its grandeur to be the pride of the protection of his little farm was hollow from top to bottom. There was only a rim of sound wood remaining, barely sufficient to support its weight. So what was he to do? If he cut it down, it would do great damage with its great length and spreading branches. If he let it remain, his family was in constant danger. In a storm, it might fall, or the wind might blow it down. His house and his children will be crushed by the tree. So what should he do? Well, as he turned away, he said sadly, I wish I never saw that squirrel. Ignorance is bliss. We want to avoid the squirrel. The man whose body I've entered the other day, he and his beloved, they were driving down the road, and they were talking about how there are people in this country who may mean well, but because they don't take the time to learn sensitivity and history, that their actions, despite the intent, may be foolish actions. His beloved informed him, yes, they may not get it, but it is also because they don't want to get it. They, like the man with the forest home, do not want to see the squirrel. So I'm going to further complicate the American matter. The first group of people create the myth. They come to this new country because they want to make a fortune, build an economy, build civilization on the backs of free labor, pass those benefits as such on to their children. The second group of people, we will not permit them to do so. Now, we say to them, you will work, but I will own your labor, I will own your individuality, I will own your body and your mind. Taking people away from their land is kidnapping. Controlling their body and mind, that's slavery. It's brainwashing and slavery. I knew it was unjust, despite what I said in the Douglas debates, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was not an abolitionist who criticized Southerners, and because of the contradictory system that I was immersed in and taught in, I felt that enslaved Africans were an alien group who were violently uprooted from their native land. And so I seriously consider colonization. Send them back to West Africa. And as a 19th century man, this was not an unusual perspective. As Boyd's beloved said, I did not want to get it. I'm sharing all of my personal effects with you to share what was hidden until it can no longer be hidden. And the opportunity to acknowledge my shortcomings with you and to invite you on my journey from ignorance to the progressive heart. The progressive heart that I had toward African Americans on the eve of my assassination. And to present the example of seeing the universe through the eyes of God in this state of consciousness. So now that we understand, I want to further complicate matters some more. I displayed the system to you. I clarified kidnapping and control to you. Now I want to present how slavery supported the growth and selling of cotton. And they called it cane cotton. There's a reason why. Cotton was one of the first international global industries founded in this country. Now here's what's bizarre. The first group of people I told you about, right? The first group of people who set forth upon this continent to form a new nation, they left their previous continent to be here, yet they kidnapped another group of people from their land, brought them here, made them pick this crop so it could be sold by the first group of people, and they sold it back to their old continent that they left in the first place for the sole purpose of freedom that we have forbidden for the second group of people. Again, this is the truth. I want you to know that I was in life aware of the mental and physical pain, the senseless torture, needless killing, maiming, the rape, and the intellectual and emotional defaming of this cruelty. It almost seems like history wants to create a picture that I was an elitist in an ivory tower without any knowledge of these atrocities. Finally, I want you to imagine if we never had this practice. Imagine if Africans could have come to this country, worked, and earned their keep, bought land, built homes and communities, just like their white counterparts. Imagine what America would look like today if in the 17th century Africans were able to come on their free will and were able to do those things. How would this nation be today if the original ancestors, just a little yonder down the road, if they had the same opportunities that the original European ancestors did? Both groups of people read the same Bible, prayed to the same God, and each invokes their aid against the other. It may seem strange that any being should dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other people's faces, but let us judge not, that we not be judged. In other words, we've been filched, misappropriated, we've been conned. Slavery cheated the African American, and it also cheated the Caucasian American. Every single person in this structure. Slavery cheated the United States of America. And it is indeed this country's greatest mistake. The more I think about this, the more validated I feel in my work in preserving the Union. I felt this more than I ever did in life and otherwise. And in this state of consciousness that I am in, I felt this more when I witnessed your Barack Obama, a true African American, become the 44th president of the United States. We were cheated for so long. We maintained the concept of being a European satellite instead of a global community. And now from where I am, I see great promise in the younger generations of your 21st century. I see great promise in the awakening of the beginnings of creating this global community that we've always had the potential of being. And because of the resentment and the inability of imagining this country reaching this higher consciousness, we find ourselves at the dawn of another civil war. When I was your president, I witnessed a party make war rather than let a nation survive, while the other party accepted war rather than to let the nation perish. Although not politically, I see in your 2023, you are culturally at the threshold of where we were in 1861. Race riots, attempted riots at your pride celebrations, mass shootings, and furthering racial divisions more and more by the day. I hold great sorrow and sadness for you that the division between the races has not healed in 158 years. 158 years after General Granger's announcement that enslaved Africans are forever free in Texas on June 19, 1865. I know along with me, my contemporaries, and more so my ancestors, concede the state of this country. But you can change it completely, and it starts individually. This is a sacred effort. So my objective was achieved. I got you to face the truth. So now if Yahshua told us that the truth shall set us free, let us take up our spiritual arms in creating positivity, while first understanding that all creation begins with choice. Do you understand the power of choice? Because it begins with you. Any change you wish to see in the world begins with you. Now in spirit, I come back to you in the body of a black man. Something I am sure that a 19th century man would not even in spirit. I made that choice. I made that sacred effort. You will not have your experience without your sovereign choice. You know, at the reception of my second inauguration, a black man was at the door of the White House, and he insisted on being admitted. And the police forbade him from coming in, and he bolted past them, and in less than a half a minute, he was invited into the East Room. This man was Frederick Douglass, and thus became the first African American in history to be invited into an inaugural reception. I saw him and exclaimed, "Here comes my friend Douglass." And I cordially shook his hand and said, "Douglass, I saw you in the crowd listening to my inaugural address, and there's no man's opinion I value more than yours. I asked him what he thought, and he told me, Mr. Lincoln, it was a sacred effort. I'm encouraging you to make your sacred effort. May this month of Black History lead you to contemplate what is yours to do. The energy, as you say, is high. In many words, in what I stated in that second inaugural address, is to let justice have its course. I told the nation in so many words to let justice have its course, and Douglas called it a humane and respectful justice. Let justice have its course. And with your challenges, I wish to leave you to remember, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we all are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for them, who shall have borne the battle, and for their widower, and their orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Thank you.